Thank you so much. It's wonderful to talk to so many eyes, pairs of eyes, and hopefully people that are also listening. That'd be pretty cool. I'm going to talk about one of the seldom talked about business concepts called Agile. Is anyone familiar with this concept of Agile? Okay, cool. So yeah, one, it's not seldom used, of course. It's been talked about probably for 10, 15 years in business, I guess a lot longer in software development. But I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to try and borrow some of the concepts of Agile and talk about it from a hiring and talent perspective, which hopefully will work. It's a bit of an experiment. This is an Agile process in action. Ship early, right? So firstly, before I get into that, I just want to kind of talk about a few things from Maker's perspective. We kind of exist to transform lives, and I'm sure many of you already kind of know that we do this, and we have done for the last 6 years. But the key thing for me is this kind of subtext about accelerating the careers of technology professionals by integrating, and that key word is integrating, education with employment. I'll talk about why the integrating piece is so important, because really quickly. What normally we have in the world of education and the world of work, conscious that you can't see over here, is that they're disparate and unconnected. And we kind of go through this conveyor belt of education until the ages of 22 or something like that with university, and that's what a lot of people think about when they think about education. And they kind of fall off this conveyor belt and then have to pick up the pieces and try and figure out what the world of work really looks like, and that's why we have things like grad schemes. And it seems kind of weird to me that we have grad schemes, present company accepted, because lots of people are doing grad schemes in the room, of course, but it kind of seems weird that we have this conveyor belt of education, and then suddenly we need to unlearn all of this learning that's happened over the last 18 years or whatever, and then try and learn this new thing, which is called work. And I think there's a number of ways that this can be improved. So we can connect these two worlds, and connection is good, and a lot of people are connecting the world of work with education, but what we try to do is marry these two things completely together. And what I found quite interesting when I joined Makers was this mission existed. And of course, the mission of Apprenticeships is to do exactly that. It's the vehicle which is all about integrating the world of work with the world of education. There's no reason why these things should be disparate, other than it's something that we've done for the last 100, 150 years or whatever it is, because of the Industrial Revolution and the changes that happen with education. So just that idea of integrating is so integral and so important to what we do at Makers, but it's also so in line with both the word and the spirit of what the Apprenticeships program is all about. So what I'm here to do is make Makers Apprenticeships the best technology apprenticeship in the country. I'd like to put the world, but we can't because we don't do apprenticeships all over the world, but maybe we will take over the world in some capacity some other time. These are some of the concepts that we kind of talk about. Accelerated learning, I'm sure that you're all familiar that we run the 12-week boot camp. We won't talk about that too much. We are industry-led. We focus very heavily on integrating, as I said, that employment piece into what we train people in, so that they have really relevant experience, really relevant skills that are contextualised and applied into the workplace directly and really seamlessly. Agile, which I will talk about in a few minutes, and then of course we pride ourselves on our inclusivity, which Alice particularly is going to talk about quite a bit. So I'm going to talk about this concept of Agile, not necessarily from the perspective that a lot of people kind of are familiar with Agile from. So I'm sure that people are familiar with this kind of thing, the idea that what the dream is to have something faster, something cheaper, and something better. So this idea of the integration of these three things, I'm sure many people have seen these slides where you can't have three things. You can have two of those things, potentially. You might only be able to have one of those things. But the idea is, there we go, you can't have all three things. You can't have something which is both or all fast, cheap, and better than previous examples. It just doesn't exist, and I think it's a common misconception that we have about those things. But there is also a common misconception about Agile itself. Agile isn't necessarily about getting things faster. It isn't necessarily about getting things cheaper, but it is about getting things better. And I think that's a really important thing, and something, again, at Makers, what we do is really important. Now, I think that this is a bit of a myth about Agile, is that if anyone's worked in Agile teams, you will undoubtedly have seen that you can do some things cheaper and you can do things faster. And that's a really great side effect, but it's not the first priority of anything agile. It's not the value proposition of agile. The thing about agile is that it should be of high value. It should be quality, it should have fast iterative feedback loops, and it should be producing the best results, the best software in normal software development possible. And that's the point of agile. And that's what we're trying to do at Makers with our hiring. So you can see hopefully that these two worlds can connect-ish. So I'm going to take four different concepts of agile and explain what we do at Makers in order to make this kind of a reality. So one of the agile principles is valuing individuals and interactions over processes and tools, essentially. So that's hugely important. It's about constant communication with software developers and learning to be software developers, our apprentices, constant communication with employers to make sure that we're doing the right thing and we are continuously being in line with industry practices and values and those kind of things. So hugely important to us is this kind of face-to-face feedback, constant feedback cycles, and constant communication. One of the big things about Agile, of course, is responding to change and actually planning for change. You know, there's these great commentary about the only thing that we can be truly certain of is that we have no certainty of the future. We know that everything is going to change. Because it's going to change, why don't we plan for those changes? Why don't we create these cycles of learning and involvement with people where we are planning for those changes to happen, and we can therefore respond directly to those changes. We know that we're teaching people software development right now in a certain way, but in 3, 5, 10 years' time, the whole world is going to change completely. We won't be focusing on React or C# or Java or any of these languages that are so commonplace now. So what we really need to be doing is responding to that in a way that gives our apprentices and our learners and our makers and our developers the opportunity to learn constantly. They're constantly learning. Adaptive and iterative. We have, as you know, the boot camp. One of the great advantages of doing a boot camp in this style is that we can constantly have this feedback cycle. In fact, our weeks are different. Every week we try something different. We run our program essentially in sprint cycles. So we have retrospectives on each week, so we can change the very next week depending on how people progress through those weeks, depending on how a certain client wants us to kind of change or mould some parts of the curriculum so that we can be more responsive to them. So those really short feedback loops are really, really important. It kind of strikes me as quite strange. Again, apologies if people are doing this. I kind of like to be provocative every now and again. But why would we have a 2-year program where people are becoming apprentices after 2 years and being software developers, but they're not actually progressing until the very end of that 2 years? That feedback cycle is huge, right? That's a classic waterfall, if you like, if you want to kind of carry on with that agile versus waterfall methodology or approach. What we try to do is iterate constantly and get that feedback cycle looping really quickly. The key thing for us, of course, is a quality focus. Now, the Agile kind of manifesto talks about working software as the primary measure of success. For us, working in software, creating code, working every day in programming is the quality that we're looking for. That's the measure of success that we really want to have. We want people that are developing production code as quickly as possible, and we do that in just 12 weeks. People are literally, after 12 weeks, they're going back to employers and they're working in software teams, creating production code. We've had our first round of people that have gone through this cycle in the last few months, and they're writing production code in week 13 and having that deployed to real-life apps, which is pretty phenomenal and pretty staggering kind of thing. But that's the primary focus for us. And of course, I do like my circles. We have this kind of constant feedback thing. Now, how we can do this in practice and the value that this adds is when you're able to have those constant feedback loops, you're able to have 12-week cycles, or week-long cycles of iteration, but 12 weeks where you're having quality coming back into your organisation, quality talent coming back into the organisation. What that means is that then you've got a number of people that can support the next tranche of intake. We've had this problem with junior engineers. How do we support juniors really well? Kind of, you know, us as talent people and HR people and learning professionals and these kind of things, we want to make sure that the people who we're serving, those tech leads, the people that we're serving are really happy with the quality of the talent. That means we're doing a great job, right? So we can get that talent up to speed as quickly as possible, moving toward mid-level engineers as quickly as possible. We have that constant feedback loop, we have that mentoring that automatically happens because people are already in the organisation having gone through the programme already. Those are some amazing cycles and processes that can kind of happen. I'm going to wrap up very quickly. So our approach to learning is we consider everyone to be a real developer from day zero, if you like, before they are on the course. There's a lot of agile in this, so we want people to learn agile practices, agile methodologies. We talk about this as a mindset far more than a set of skills, if you like, or processes. This is about understanding how the inner workings of an agile team really work. We focus heavily, and I'm sure that our two apprentices here will contest this as well, we focus heavily on self-directed learning. There is no point for us in giving people the answers and giving people a textbook and saying, oh, by the way, look at the back, all the answers are there. There's no point in that because no one's going to learn the practices that they need to have in order to be the best future lifelong learners that people that we want to have. And we have fearless and agile learners. These are people that take risks, take challenge, embrace it, fail as quickly as possible to learn and iterate through that, those cycles as quickly as possible. It's core to being an engineer. We find that the first year of any junior engineer is probably over 50% learning. So we need to have those learning to learn skills really embedded into everything that we do, so we put people through that challenging situation of being constantly learning. Now I really like this idea of what a maker is. This is a dictionary definition. A person or thing that makes or produces something, creator. I really like point 2. Which I think many of our makers really are quite godlike. But one of the things, the final thing is, I think we will all agree that the world needs people who identify problems, who design solutions, that create products and implement change and drive change within those organisations. We've seen this at Makers over the last 6 years, and we're going to see this a lot more. Universities create thinkers, we create makers, and I think the makers are what the world really, really, really needs. I'm done, 3 minutes early. So if anyone does have any questions, I would love to field some questions and ask me anything at all about what you've heard here or something else about the apprenticeship. I will finish off in a few minutes with something else as well. Got any questions? Yes, please. I want to take this. Is that different to do?
Is attrition something that's potentially an issue with kind of doing the majority of the learning in the first 12 weeks of the programme?
It's a really good question, and we haven't had a problem at all with attrition. No one has dropped out of the course out of 7 cohorts that we've got live now. I think they genuinely see the value of the programme after 12 weeks. So I should say that the apprenticeship programme is longer than 12 weeks. It actually lasts for a minimum of 12 months. We actually cover all of the off-the-job training in the first 12 weeks, but we provide a huge amount of support ongoing as well. So we have constant support ongoing in kind of Slack and all these other communication tools, but we also have monthly check-ins and support for things around continuing technical development and learning, around holistic support, because that's hugely important to us as well, about lifelong learning and next step career progression, as well as endpoint assessment and things as well. People value, I think, qualification, which we were unsure about, to be honest. And it was a risk of ours to go, oh, we give everyone the training up front, are they going to stick around, or are they just going to go do makers and then get a job anywhere else? But we're finding that people do really want to stick around. They value that additional expertise and the kind of on-tap resource that we kind of provide for them as well. Very much for that. Any other, I think there's a hand at the back there.
So I'm quite loud.
There we go. Thank you.
So, of my limited knowledge of makers, I understand that you had courses prior to apprenticeships. What made you go down the apprenticeship route, and what challenges have you seen working with various companies that you provide for on the apprenticeship side versus your core previous years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, we've been operating for 6 years. Evgeny, who you're sat next to, is our founder and CEO. Started the business. He will probably explain this far better than I will, but I will try and do it justice. We started because of this tech talent problem, because Evgeny is a developer but was finding it really hard to to source really great talent. He was talking to people who wanted to become software engineers but were learning through big Java manuals and these kind of things. It just wasn't a conducive way to learn. So we've done that for the last 5 years. The thing that drove us to change, I think, was having a bigger impact on more people. The vehicle of apprenticeship is actually perfectly in line, as I said, with our values. It's about integrating the world of work and the world of education and providing this opportunity to far more people. And if I'm truthful, we want you to pay for it rather than individuals to pay for it, right? So we have to start somewhere. We wanted to make this change. We wanted to get people to learn these amazing skills that are going to be able to carry them through the rest of their life, albeit changing. But we wanted to make that free at the point of delivery for the people on the program. And that means that we can open up that inclusivity. It's like one of my colleagues calls it a golf club. You have to pay. There's this barrier of entry into a golf club, if you like. There's a barrier of entry to what Makers was, and we want to make that free for everyone. So it's driven by inclusivity, it's driven by high values and wanting to make a bigger impact, I think. Yes?
When you think about the 12-week boot camp, you're the only company I've seen that does it in that way, especially you just mentioned the off-the-job piece. So I'm just wondering kind of pros and cons. I almost am like, does the government believe you? like are there any issues you run into in terms of that model, and why do you think it works so well? I love that. That's great. I could sell that to my business very easily.
Let's see that. Sounds Steve, you got
because that's what they're most worried about is I don't want to lose people 1 day a week.
Absolutely, yeah, hugely important. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about here really quickly. The first thing is the government do believe it. We're actually working with a government cohort with people from the ESFA, which is kind of funny because most of the ESFA systems, if anyone's used to them, are pretty horrible, and we're really looking forward to a bunch of makers going in and changing some of these systems. So we're working with the Department of Education, DWP, ESFA, we're working with the central government directly with the cohort, and that's an incredible opportunity for us. So yes, they do truly believe it. Now, we do have this other thing called regulation and compliance, which we haven't been used to over the last 6 years, but some of the framework and some of the standard changes with the apprenticeship meant that we were able to offer this boot camp, highly intensive boot camp program. If we weren't able to do that, quite frankly, we wouldn't do it because we consider it to be a similar thing to a journalist, if you like. If you think about, if you need a journalist, you need someone who can understand English and hopefully write a bit of English before they start. Otherwise, there's no value to your organisation. No value to the kind of journal, the writing team, the content team, or whatever. So we need to have people that are going into organisations that can write code. They can have conversations about code. They can talk about things. They can actually challenge. We find this a lot as well. Challenge their line managers and their tech leads about certain things and ways of working and technology stacks and all these kind of things. And that's what we're trying to instill in these makers through that program. So it's a really good question. And it's absolutely working. We're having no issues on the government side of things at all. In fact, they're embracing it very much.
Great, thank you.
Turn it on. Turn it all the way on.
So
it is on. I think we've got like one more question maybe, but if we're...
Yes.
I'm sure we'll probably hear this from Ayres as a technical coach, but what kind of background do your coaches tend to come from?
Coaches?
Yeah.
It's varied. I think all of our coaches are professional software engineers, so they're not teachers first. They are software engineers that practice professionally software and coding. And Alice, I'm sure, will talk about the story. Not planning to talk about her story. Sorry. So Alice is an example of the face of our coaching team right now. Worked for Facebook for a number of years, then worked with an organisation that teaches people to code as well as a kind of CTO, and then joined Makers on the back of this experience that you have. Wanting to continue with learning, wanting to impart some of that knowledge and experience over the last few years to helping other people kind of come through. That's a common thing. But what we're actually finding now, which I think is a really fascinating thing, is that quite a few people that have been through Makers 5 years ago are now coming through after working in software for 2, 3, 4 years and actually becoming coaches because they believe in the practices. It is an incredibly cool thing, and actually I think we should be bottling that in some ways as well. That's an amazing opportunity to kind of productize, if you like. So yeah, we've got in apprenticeships, we've got Dan, Eddie, Sam. 3 of our coaches are ex-Makers alumni, if you like. And some of them have gone away, come back, coached for a bit, gone away, done some more stuff, come back, coached for a bit. So it's very agile. So yeah, it's a number of different routes, but they are professional software engineers that are then focusing on coaching. Cool, I think that is questions.
Yes, thank you so much. Can we just give Spencer a massive round of applause?